What would happen to you if you went into the deep woods alone at night? Just you, the pitch black darkness, and whatever is hiding between the trees. Well, let's find out. Let's jump straight into the story. The echoes in the trees. You need to understand something about the Appalachian Mountains in the United States. They aren't just old, they are ancient. Geologists say these mountains were formed hundreds of millions of years ago, before bones even existed on Earth. The forests there are so dense that if you step just 10 feet off the marked hiking trail, the sunlight vanishes, and you are surrounded by a heavy, suffocating silence. Local folks who live in the small, isolated mountain towns have a golden rule. It's passed down from generation to generation, and nobody questions it. If you think you saw something in the trees, no, you didn't. And if you hear your name being called from the woods, do not look and do not answer. For a long time, people online thought this was just cool folklore, a bit of local color. But over the last few weeks, things changed. The internet started buzzing with real, deeply unsettling reports from hikers, park rangers, and campers. This is the story of what happened to a guy named Ethan, a seasoned hiker who thought he knew better. Part 1. The off-grid trip. Ethan wasn't a rookie. He had hiked the Rockies, camped in the desert, and spent weeks alone in the wilderness. In May, he decided to take a 4-day solo backpacking trip deep into a remote section of the Great Smoky Mountains, right along the Appalachian Trail. The first 2 days were beautiful. Crisp air, towering trees, and total isolation. By the third night, Ethan had set up camp in a small clearing, miles away from the nearest highway. The cell service had died hours ago. It was just him, his tent, and a small crackling campfire. Around 11:30 p.m., the forest went completely dead. Now, if you've ever been in the woods, you know they are never actually quiet. There are always crickets, frogs, the rustling of small animals, or the wind in the leaves. But Ethan noticed the noise didn't just fade, it stopped instantly, like someone had hit a master mute button on the entire forest. That's when he smelled it. It was a foul, metallic stench. It smelled like copper mixed with rotting meat drifting through the trees. Then came the sound. Part 2. The voice. From the pitch-black darkness, about 50 yards past the edge of his campfire's light, a voice called out, "Hey, is anyone there? I need help." Ethan froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. Finding another hiker in distress wasn't impossible. But something about the voice felt wrong. It didn't sound like a person shouting in fear or pain. It sounded flat, monotone, almost like a recording being played back at the wrong speed. Ethan grabbed his heavy-duty tactical flashlight, stood up and aimed the beam into the dense tree line. The light cut through the fog, illuminating thick trunks and tangled brush, but there was nobody there. "Hello?" Ethan called out, his voice shaking. "Are you hurt? Stay where you are. I can come to you." The response was immediate, but it sent a shiver straight down Ethan's spine. The voice replied, using the exact same tone, the exact same pitch, and the exact same pauses. "Hello? Are you hurt? Stay where you are. I can come to you." It wasn't an echo. The voice was mimicking him. It was repeating his own words back to him, but the pronunciation was slightly off, like an animal trying to shape its mouth around human words for the very first time. Part 3. The shape in the dark. Ethan retreated toward his tent, keeping his flashlight pointed at the brush. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe someone is messing with me. But then, the flashlight beam caught something. Between two massive oak trees, something was crouching. At first, Ethan thought it was a deer or a starved bear because it was on all fours. But as he focused the light, his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. The entity was pale, an unnatural translucent white that seemed to absorb the flashlight's glare. Its limbs were impossibly long and thin, bent at angles that human joints shouldn't be able to achieve. It had no hair, and its skin looked like it was stretched too tightly over a skeletal frame. But the worst part was the face. It didn't really have one. Where the eyes should have been, there were just deep, dark hollows, and its mouth was a jagged slit. As the light hit it, the creature didn't run. It stood up on its hind legs. It stretched up, growing taller and taller until it was easily 8 or 9 feet high, hidden partially by the upper canopy of the leaves. And then it spoke again. But this time, it didn't use Ethan's voice. It used the voice of a young girl, crying, sobbing, desperate. "Please, Daddy, it's cold. Open the door."
1 second.
Enjoying the chills? We work incredibly hard to bring you these terrifying, real-life horror stories. Please take a second to like this video and subscribe to support the channel so you never miss another nightmare. Part 4, The Flight. Ethan didn't think. He didn't pack his tent. He didn't grab his supplies. He just turned and ran. He sprinted down the narrow dirt trail, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly against the trees. Behind him, he could hear it. Whatever was chasing him wasn't running like a human. He could hear heavy, chaotic thuds. Thump, 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 as it tore through the thick underbrush on all fours, easily snapping branches that were inches thick. The smell of copper and rot grew stronger, closing in on him. Every time Ethan felt like he was gaining distance, a voice would echo from a completely different direction, as if the entity was moving at impossible speeds, circling him in the dark. "Hey, is anyone there?" It whispered from the left. "Please, Daddy, open the door," it cried from the right. Ethan kept his eyes glued straight ahead, remembering the old warnings he had laughed at online. Don't look back. Just keep moving. He ran for what felt like hours, his lungs burning, his legs turning to jelly, driven purely by the primal instinct to survive. Part 5. The Sunrise. Just as his flashlight battery began to flicker and die, the black sky turned a pale, bruised purple. Dawn was breaking. Ethan burst out of the tree line and tumbled directly onto the asphalt of a state highway. He collapsed, gasping for air, bleeding from scratches all over his face and hands from the branches. He looked back at the forest. The woods were completely still. The normal sounds of the morning, birds chirping, insects buzzing, were slowly returning. There was no sign of the pale creature. A passing truck driver saw Ethan sprawled on the side of the road and pulled over. When the driver asked him what happened, Ethan could barely speak. He just pointed at the woods and muttered about a voice. The truck driver, an older local guy with tired eyes, looked at the dense tree line, sighed deeply, and shook his head. He didn't look surprised at all. He just helped Ethan into the truck and said, "You're lucky, kid. Usually, when it starts talking to you, you don't make it to the highway." The aftermath, Ethan survived, but his tent, backpack, and camera are still out there, deep in the woods. He refuses to ever go back to the area, and he sold all his hiking gear. Lately, on forums like Reddit and TikTok, more videos are popping up. Audio clips recorded by campers late at night in the Appalachians, capturing the faint, distorted sound of human voices screaming for help from deep within the dark, empty woods. Some call them skinwalkers, others call them fleshgaits, and scientists say it's just owls or foxes making weird nocturnal noises. But the people who live near those ancient mountains know the truth. Something is living out there in the deep woods. It's hungry, it's learning how we talk, and it's waiting for the next hiker to step off the trail.